Welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive. This time we're going way back to ancient Rome.
A classic.
It is a classic. And as always, you guys have sent in some awesome questions.
Yes.
You want to know more about just daily life for the average Roman, like what was their culture like and how was society structured?
Mm-hmm.
So to guide our deep dive today, we're going to be looking at this really cool blog post.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's called A Deep Dive into 10 Fascinating Aspects of Ancient Rome.
Catchy.
I know, right?
Oh, cool.
We're going to be uncovering some really interesting stuff today. Like, did you know that Roman bathhouses were like the place to be seen?
Oh, I've heard about this.
Yeah, it wasn't just about getting clean. It was a whole social scene. We'll also be looking at how the calendar we use today actually has its roots in ancient Rome.
Wow. Can't wait.
Me too. So let's dive right in, shall we? Let's start with these Roman bathhouses. Now, we all know they were places to, get clean.
Right.
But it seems like they were so much more than just a place to scrub up.
Oh, yeah, way more. What's really fascinating is that these bathhouses were actually social hubs.
Okay.
Imagine these vast spaces filled with people from all walks of life just hanging out. It wasn't just about hygiene. It was a place to connect with people.
Oh, wow.
Do business, even exercise.
Exercise. At the bathhouse, I was picturing, I don't know, something a bit more like relaxing.
Well, there was definitely relaxing involved. But the thing is, these bathhouses were seriously sophisticated.
Okay.
They had these complex heating systems, different rooms with varying temperatures,
Really?
and even dedicated areas for physical activities.
So they really were like ancient Roman spas.
Exactly. Like a one-stop shop for, getting clean, socializing, networking, and staying fit.
It sounds like these bathhouses were pretty integral to Roman society then.
Oh, absolutely. And you have to remember that Roman society was very hierarchical.
Right.
But the bathhouses, one of the few places where people from different social classes could actually, mingle.
Really? So like a senator could be chilling next to, I don't know, a merchant or a craftsman.
Exactly. All while discussing the latest, political gossip or gladiatorial games.
Wow. So the bathhouses were kind of like ancient social media platforms.
In a way, yeah. It shows you how some things never change. People always need to connect.
Very true. Okay, speaking of things that might make us squirm a bit.
Oh.
Our source material also mentions Roman public toilets. I have to admit, I'm a little curious.
Okay.
And maybe a little apprehensive.
I get it. But, even something like a toilet can tell us a lot about a civilization.
Yeah, guess so.
So Roman latrines, they were often these communal spaces
Communal?
with, rows of seats around a central drain.
Wait, communal, that's pretty different from our modern idea of privacy.
It is, isn't it? But this design, it shows us a very different understanding of privacy back then.
Interesting.
It suggests that Roman society was perhaps more practical and less concerned with individual seclusion.
Yeah, that makes you think about how our own ideas about privacy have changed over time.
For sure.
Okay, from bathhouses and toilets, let's move on to something a little less visceral.
Sounds good.
How about the Roman calendar? I'm fascinated by the fact that we still use a system that has its roots in ancient Rome.
It really shows you their influence and their practicality.
Right. I actually read somewhere that the early Romans had a 10-month calendar.
Oh, yeah.
And they just, completely ignored winter.
It's true. That early Roman calendar was quite different.
Wow.
It wasn't until Julius Caesar came along with his reforms that we got the 12-month Julian calendar, which aligns much better with the solar year.
Oh, so that's where we got July and August, named after Julius Caesar and Augustus.
You got it. And those reforms were huge.
Yeah.
They standardized timekeeping across the empire and even, as you said, influenced the development of our modern calendar.
Amazing. It's incredible to think that something we take for granted today has such ancient origins. Speaking of things we associate with Rome, let's talk about gladiators.
Oh, a classic.
I know, right? Now, most people think of gladiators as, these brutal fighters in arenas.
Mm-hmm.
But our sources are saying there's more to it than that.
Oh, absolutely. Gladiatorial combat, while definitely bloody and violent, was also deeply connected to Roman politics and social control.
So it wasn't just about entertainment.
Not just entertainment, no. Emperors actually used these games to show off their power.
Really?
To appease the masses and sometimes even to, send political messages.
I see.
Imagine the Colosseum packed with people watching these spectacles unfold.
Wow.
It was a powerful tool for shaping public opinion and really solidifying an emperor's authority.
It's incredible how these games, which seem like, on the surface, just brutal entertainment, were actually a really sophisticated way to manipulate public perception.
Right.
It makes you think about what it must have been like to be in that audience.
Yeah.
What were people thinking and feeling as they watched these gladiatorial combats?
That's a great question. It's clear that Romans had a very complex relationship with violence.
Just imagine.
On one hand, they were fascinated by it, even, reveling in it.
Right.
But on the other, there was this deep respect for the courage and skill of the gladiators.
Interesting.
It was a society that embraced spectacle and drama and the gladiatorial games. They provided both of those in abundance.
It makes me want to know more about the gladiators themselves.
Yeah.
Were they all slaves or criminals?
Well, many were slaves or prisoners of war, it's true.
Okay.
But some were actually free men.
What?
Yeah. They chose to fight for fame and fortune.
I had no idea.
They were like the celebrities of their time, admired for their strength and their fighting skills.
Wow, it's a much more nuanced picture than just, slaves forced to fight to the death.
Absolutely. There are so many human stories behind these gladiatorial combats.
Right.
Stories of desperation, ambition, and survival.
That's amazing. Okay, before we get too lost in the Colosseum, let's move on to something a little less intense.
Sure.
Roman engineering. Their aqueducts and roads were seriously impressive.
Oh, without a doubt. Their achievements in engineering were remarkable, and they were crucial for the empire's success.
Definitely.
Take the aqueducts, for example.
Yeah.
These massive structures brought fresh water over such long distances using gravity and some seriously ingenious engineering techniques.
I can't even imagine trying to build something like that today.
It's mind-blowing.
So what kind of impact did these aqueducts have on daily life for the average Roman?
Well, they were game changers. They didn't just provide clean drinking water. They also supported the public baths, sanitation systems, and even fountains.
Wow.
It's hard to overstate how important clean water is for public health and hygiene.
Totally.
And the Romans, they were masters at getting it and distributing it.
So these aqueducts weren't just impressive feats of engineering. They were essential for, the well-being of the citizens.
Absolutely. And then there are the roads.
Right.
The Roman road network was legendary. Meticulously built, stretching right across the empire, connecting everything.
It's like they built the ancient equivalent of our highway system.
You could say that. And these roads, they weren't just practical.
Yeah.
They were symbols of Roman power and influence, They represented the reach and control of the empire.
Yeah, I see that. So from bringing water to the people to connecting the far corners of their vast empire, Roman engineering really did change the course of history.
It did. It shows how important infrastructure is for any successful civilization.
Okay, so we've got these incredible bathhouses, surprisingly social toilets, a calendar that still influences us today, gladiatorial games with hidden political agendas, and mind-blowing engineering projects.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. Roman society was clearly a force to be reckoned with.
For sure.
But what was it like to actually live in ancient Rome for the everyday person?
Well, you have to remember that Roman society was built on the strict social hierarchy.
Right, we talked about that.
At the top, you had the patricians, the elite, the wealthy, the powerful. Then you had the plebeians, the commoners, the majority of the population.
Right.
And sadly, at the very bottom were the slaves.
So if you were born a plebeian, you were pretty much stuck there.
Well, social mobility was limited, but not impossible.
Okay.
Roman citizenship was a big deal. It came with certain rights and privileges.
I see.
But, of course, for those born into slavery or poverty, life was undoubtedly a struggle.
It's fascinating to consider how these social structures shaped people's lives.
Yeah. And, it's important to remember that behind all the grand monuments and the military victories, there were real people with hopes, dreams, and struggles.
Very true.
And by understanding their lives, we can get a better grasp on just how complex Roman society really was.
Definitely. We've covered a lot of ground already, and there's still so much more to explore. So let's dive back into ancient Rome after a quick message from our sponsors. We'll be back soon to chat about family life, mythology, and the lasting legacy of this incredible civilization. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Before the break, we were talking about that strict social hierarchy in ancient Rome.
Right, a key part of understanding life back then.
For sure. And it really played out within the Roman family, too.
Absolutely. Everything revolved around paterfamilias.
The oldest male, right.
Yep. He held a lot of power.
But what about the women and children? What were their lives like?
Well, women, they definitely operated within a patriarchal system.
Right.
But they weren't completely powerless.
Okay.
They managed the household, raised the kids, and sometimes even controlled the finances.
So important, but still within certain boundaries.
Exactly.
What about the kids? What were their paths like?
Well, there were very specific expectations for children. Sons were basically groomed to follow in their father's footsteps.
Okay.
Whether it was politics, business, military,
Makes sense.
and for daughters, the focus was usually on getting them ready for marriage and domestic life.
So pretty different from our views today.
For sure, but those traditional gender roles were deeply ingrained in Roman society.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Absolutely. And while those roles could differ a bit based on social class and individual situations,
Right.
that patriarchal structure, it was always there in the Roman family.
Gotcha. Okay, let's switch gears a bit
Okay.
and talk about Roman mythology. I've always been fascinated by all their gods and goddesses.
It's a rich pantheon for sure.
It is. So what can our sources tell us about the role religion played in their lives?
You have to remember that religion, it was everywhere in Roman life.
Really?
It wasn't just about worshiping these gods from afar. They believed these gods were actively involved in the world,
Wow.
influencing everything, the weather, politics, even personal luck.
So it wasn't just about saying a few prayers.
Oh, no, it was about having a real relationship with these divine beings. They had all these elaborate rituals, festivals, ceremonies, all to honor and appease the gods.
It sounds intense.
It was. They believed that if they kept a good relationship with the gods, it would ensure the well-being of individuals in the state.
Wow. It makes me think of all those amazing temples you see in pictures of ancient Rome.
Right.
Did they have specific temples for each god?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Rome was full of temples, each dedicated to a particular deity.
Cool.
And the priests, they were super important.
I bet.
They acted like go-betweens, between the human and divine realms,
Right.
conducting rituals, interpreting omens, the whole 9 yards.
It's amazing how much their beliefs influenced everything.
Absolutely, from their worldview to their values to their daily lives.
To really understand a civilization, you have to understand their spiritual beliefs.
Couldn't agree more. It's a crucial lens to look through.
Okay, this might sound silly, but did they have a god for plumbing?
A god for plumbing.
Because seriously, those Romans were incredible with water management, those aqueducts.
Well, I don't know about a specific god of plumbing,
Okay.
but they did have Neptune, the god of water,
Right.
who was also associated with horses and earthquakes.
Interesting combination.
Maybe we can just give him plumbing duties, too.
Sounds good to me. So from water deities to those innovative aqueducts, the Romans really left their mark on the world.
No doubt about it.
We've been talking about their legacy throughout this deep dive.
We have.
But what would you say are the most lasting impacts of Roman civilization?
Oh, wow. Where do we even start? Their legacy is huge. We've already talked about the calendar system.
Still use it today.
Right. But there's so much more. Roman law, it forms the foundation of legal systems in many countries, even today.
So the next time I end up in court, I can thank the Romans.
Well, maybe not directly.
Fair enough.
But you can appreciate how their legal principles still influence our concepts of justice and government.
That's incredible. What else?
Their architecture. Think Congrate, the arch, domes, those incredible amphitheaters.
Wow.
They were architectural geniuses.
And we still see their influence today.
Everywhere. Public buildings, stadiums, even some modern houses.
It's true.
And we can't forget their language, Latin.
Right.
While not widely spoken today,
Yeah.
it has massively influenced many modern languages.
Sounds cool.
Romance languages, Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese.
So even our language carries traces of ancient Rome.
Exactly. It's like a linguistic time capsule, isn't it?
It is.
And beyond those physical things, there's their cultural legacy,
Right.
their literature, philosophy, art, political ideas. They all still resonate with us today.
It's amazing how a civilization from so long ago
I know.
can still be so relevant.
It really shows you the power of ideas and how connected human history is.
It's been incredible exploring all of this.
It has.
I feel like we've only just scratched the surface, but we've covered so much.
We have. It's been great journeying through Roman history with you. And I hope our listener is feeling inspired to learn even more.
Me too. There's always something new to discover. So let's take a moment to think about what we've learned today. So, we're back and ready for our final thoughts on ancient Rome. What a journey, right?
It really has been. It's amazing how much we've uncovered.
I know. From those massive gladiatorial spectacles to, the surprisingly social public toilets.
You really hung up on those toilets, huh?
Well, they're just so unexpected. But seriously, For me, I think the biggest takeaway is just how huge and influential the Roman Empire was.
It was
It
massive.
wasn't just like a military powerhouse. It was a whole cultural phenomenon that shaped Western civilization.
Totally agree. Their influence is everywhere.
It really is.
Our laws, our languages, the buildings we see, even our political systems.
It's wild to think a civilization that existed centuries ago is still so relevant to us today.
I know, right? It makes you wonder what it would be like if we could actually travel back in time to ancient Rome.
Oh, that's a good one. What do you think would surprise those ancient Romans the most about our world today?
Tough question. I mean, obviously, they'd be blown away by our technology.
Oh, yeah, smartphones, cars, airplanes, the whole shebang.
Right. But I also think they'd be surprised by how much of their own culture we've held on to.
That's a good point.
We might think of them as being so different from us,
Yeah.
but we're still dealing with a lot of the same issues.
Like what?
Political corruption, social inequality, trying to keep things peaceful in a crazy world, you know?
Yeah.
And those big philosophical questions they struggled with.
About morality and justice and what it all means.
Exactly. Those are still relevant to us today.
It just goes to show that history is more than just like dates and names.
It is.
It's a whole story, a human story that's still unfolding.
Absolutely. And we're all part of it, building on what came before.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into ancient Rome, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from all of this?
I hope it makes them curious, you know? Makes them want to keep learning about history.
Yes.
Ancient Rome might be gone, but its legacy is still alive in so many ways.
That's a great way to put it.
And the more we explore history,
Yeah.
the more we connect with the people who came before us, and more we understand ourselves and the world we live in.
Beautifully said. And for our listeners out there, if you're feeling inspired to delve deeper into ancient Rome, there are so many amazing resources available.
There are.
Books, documentaries, museums, even virtual tours. It's an endless adventure.
It is. And don't just stick to the surface, you know?
You know what I mean?
Go deeper, read the writings of Roman philosophers and poets, look for accounts of everyday life.
Okay.
Let your curiosity lead the way. You never know what you might find.
Awesome advice. Well, on that note, we'll say goodbye for now, fellow history buffs. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into ancient Rome. And until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep those brains buzzing.